Hey guys, this is Josh here with Trillium Wild Edibles, and today I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about how to identify a plant known as Sheperds Purse. Throughout this video, we're just going to go over some of the basic identification factors of this plant. This is a very common plant that you are going to find in your yard. Now, one last thing that I want to say before we get into this video is that my voice is going to be a little bit off because I just got over losing my voice. My voice was gone for a couple of days. So I apologize if my voice sounds a little hoarse right now. However, the plant that we're looking at right now is Shepherd's Purse. This is a very common plant that loves very poor soil. This one that we're looking at is growing right on the edge of my driveway, for example. Shepherd's Purse usually grows in a single plant at a time, but each plant can send up multiple stalks, like we're seeing here with this plant in front of us. The flowers of the plant are very, very small and they are white. They happen at the very tops of the plant, and all the way down the stem you're going to notice these little heart-shaped seed pods. We're going to take a little bit of a closer look at the flowers and the seed pods right now. Shepherd's Purse usually flowers in the early spring, normally starting out at around mid-April for where I live in central Indiana. And it can bloom all the way up until mid-May and sometimes even early June within my area. You're going to notice how the flowers are very small and white, and they also form these clusters at the top of a stem. Each stem that comes out of the plant is going to have its own cluster of flowers at the top. And there are multiple numbers of flowers. There can be 15 or 20 or even more flowers at the top, but it usually ranges anywhere from about 10 to 15 individual flowers at the top of the stem. Now, since the flowers are so small, I'm not actually able to pick them up on my camera close enough to show you the number of petals, but they do have 4 petals. Each flower will have 4 petals. So that's another thing to really keep in mind whenever you're looking at this plant and trying to identify it. As we look down the stem on Shepherd's Purse, whenever it starts to produce its seeds, we're going to notice all of these heart-shaped seed pods. Another interesting thing about these seed pods is that these seed pods are actually edible, and they're similar to another plant that looks like this that's called poor man's pepper. And that's because they have a very peppery flavor to them. They are quite delicious, and you can use them in place of black pepper in your kitchen. So that's a cool thing to keep in mind whenever you see this plant. The leaves of Shepherd's Purse are variable. There are actually 2 different shapes of leaves to this plant. Whenever the plant is in flower and starts to produce seeds like we see in front of us, the leaves are going to be very narrow and linear, like we can see on this one right here at the tip of my finger. Get that guy out of the way. The leaves are going to be very thin and linear in shape, but they also have some lobes at the back. These leaves grow in an alternating pattern up and down the stem, and they clasp around the stem at the back. Now, if we take a very close look at the stem, we can notice these clasping, alternating leaves. Right here you can see what I mean by clasping. These leaves clasp and hold on to the stem, and they do have these little lobes at the back that go around the stem. If we turn this around, we can notice this even more, as well as noticing the alternate pattern that these leaves have as they go down the stem. On the margins of the leaves, we're going to notice little bitty teeth. The teeth are there, but they are very, very tiny. At first glance, these leaves might look smooth along the margins, but they are not. Also, you might notice how as we go further up the plant, the leaves get more and more small versus they get larger the further down we go on the stem. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, the second set of leaves that you are going to see on your Shepherd's Purse are going to be down at the bottom. This plant starts off with a basal rosette in the very early spring, usually at around March to the middle of April. And at the middle of April, this plant will usually start to send up its stems out of these basal rosettes. Now, in your field guide, you're going to probably notice that they're going to describe these leaves as dandelion-like. In my opinion, they look nothing like a dandelion. They're actually very, very different, as we can tell by all of these very sharp divisions on each one of the lobes along this leaf. Now, the further into seed that Shepherd's Purse gets, the more and more of these basal leaves are going to die off. So that's something to pay attention to whenever you see these shape of leaves in your yard or in your garden or around your driveway. So let's compare these basal leaves to a dandelion leaf. There we can see the shepherd's purse leaf, and now we can see the dandelion leaf. There's the dandelion, and there's the shepherd's purse. So these leaves look nothing alike. They are somewhat similar, but they are also very, very different. The stem of shepherd's purse is pretty indistinct. There's really nothing important to note about this stem. It's round and it's bright green. It's very flexible, as we can see right here. It's very, very flexible. There's really nothing distinct about this at all. So just keep in mind that you don't really need to pay attention to the stem of the plant as much. However, one thing we will notice on the stem is that on a lot of the lower halves of the stem, we're going to see other small stems coming out around the leaves, like we can see right here at this joint, or at the petiole of the clasping leaf. And we can see this stem has its own leaves, and then is also developing its own set of flowers. So that's another interesting feature about this plant, is that each node on the lower half of the stem can produce more stems. So you want to make sure that you're looking for that whenever you're trying to identify this plant. Thankfully, there aren't any toxic lookalikes, to my knowledge, at least not in the U.S. There may be in other parts of the globe. But in the United States, there are no toxic lookalikes to this plant. So it is very, very safe to identify. It's very safe to forage. And this is also a great plant for children to learn because it is so safe. There are a lot of different ways that you can use shepherd's purse whenever you go and forage it. In the early spring, before it sends up its stalks, the basal leaves are actually quite delicious chopped up into salads. They have a very mild but somewhat peppery flavor. They're very, very good. Now you guys might remember earlier I mentioned the heart-shaped seed pods can be used in place of black pepper in the kitchen. These go really good mixed on top of a chicken, like if you're rubbing a whole chicken down with pepper and seasonings and herbs. These are a great thing to add for that little extra kick. They also go really good in stir fries as well, or pastas. You can also use these seed pods in salads for a nice peppery crunch. So that's how you guys can identify shepherd's purse, and that's a few of the ways that it can be used. I hope this video has helped you guys out, and I thank you all for watching. If you want to see more videos about wild edibles or medicinal plants, please make sure to subscribe.